Earthquakes, landslides, typhoons, tsunamis. We call them natural disasters, but the toll they take on the most vulnerable, especially children, is unnatural. The numbers of those killed, injured or made destitute by natural hazards is due mainly to a lack of preparedness, sometimes environmental mismanagement, and occasionally corruption. Children on the front line comes from the front line of disasters. We focus on young people who are taking it upon themselves to reduce the risks to themselves and to their communities. We begin in southern Leyte in the Philippines, one of the world's most disaster-prone countries. It's a country where 1/3 of the population is under 14. In this program, we feature landslide survivor Alvin and schoolgirl Honey. We'll see how, with the help of a governor and a handful of sympathetic community leaders, they're leading a campaign started by students to reduce the risk of the terrible death of suffocation in a wall of sliding mud. School children are drilled for disaster. According to the Philippines Red Cross, the country is hit by an average of 21 typhoons a year. It's also on the Philippine fault zone, making earthquakes a common occurrence. Most dreaded are the savage tropical storms that cause devastating mudslides and flash floods. 16-year-old Alvin is one of only 374 survivors of a devastating landslide in 2006, which killed 1,126 people in Guinsagon village. At least 200 schoolchildren were killed when the school was engulfed. Alvin survived and believes many of his fellow students could have been saved if the community had been better prepared. He now teaches younger children how to minimize the risks of future disasters.
Okay, how many kinds of hazards do we have? 4. What is it?
Landslide.
Flash flood. Typhoon. First, you will draw your school and determine the hazard of your school.
The children are even being involved in redrawing maps that pinpoint places of greatest risk. It's called hazard mapping and is now as familiar a part of the curriculum as maths and science.
Our school is prone to landslide, flash flood, vehicular accident, and also earthquake.
We children have the right to participate in every activities in our community, in our school, and also in our nation. It is better for us to facilitate by our own in different activities because we're not depending on some other people because not all the time they are with us. So it is better to be yourself as a student as well as children, that you are knowledgeable and educated on what to do when the disaster arrives.
Santa Paz is a small barangay or community of around 75 families on the island of Panon, also in southern Leyte. When a typhoon or tropical storm floods the hillsides of Panon Island, or when an earthquake shakes the slopes, mudslides are the result. The last time mud and trees came crashing down the mountain, the village was lucky and its school was spared.
What do you think? Other problems?
17-year-old pupil Honey wants to ensure the safety of schoolchildren in the future.
There was a landslide that occurred in our village, and because of that, the people were really afraid. There is a big possibility that there could be another landslide that will happen, that can make a loss of lives because our place is now at danger and prone to landslide. So this mountain here is a local mountain. And
Like Alvin, Honey has become a disasters prevention mentor to younger pupils at Santa Paz High School on the island of Panon. Honey wants her classmates to know that although the hillsides can be death traps, there are lots of ways to diminish risk.
So because of that, our place still is at high risk to landslide. We have the right to be safe, and adults have this responsibility to make sure that we are safe. That's why it is very important that they will listen to us, because the things that we are saying is just for our own safety, and it's their responsibility to assure our safety. So that's why it is important that our voice will be heard.
A trench to divert floodwater, as well as a concrete and tree barrier, have been constructed to protect the school against mudslides. But Honey argued its location makes it vulnerable, and only a move could guarantee safety. A temporary tent school has been set up while a safe location is found.
After we, the students, decided to move to that area, we had an assessment that that place is not yet safe to build our permanent school. And because of that, we have this campaign.
Honey started a letter-writing campaign to persuade the local authorities that they should act.
We, the students, want to be relocated in a much more safer area and a more comfortable place for us to have our classes. We knew that the place in our temporary school still has hazards around it, and so it's still unsafe for us to stay.
With that campaign letter, it really empowered us children, students, because we were given the chance to speak out and what we really want. I realized that even if we're just children or students, our voice can also be heard by bigger or older persons.
For Alvin, February the 17th, 2006 will be forever etched in his memory.
Some of my students that living in the Barangay Gisagon, they are crying, shouting for their mother, and me, because I have only one friend that being buried by that tragic event. After I saw the mountain, I ran as fast as I could, remembering, refreshing the bad days, good days that we have, my relatives, my friends, my classmates over that buried by that tragic event.
The Guinsagon landslide was caused by 200 centimetres of rain falling in 10 days. It smothered the village of 1,500 inhabitants in 6 metres of mud. Only 20 people were pulled out alive. Formerly, the community had been given protection by the forest that cloaked the hillsides. But reckless logging, which has reduced forest cover by 3.5 million hectares since 1990, meant there was no protection. Nearby communities have not been spared nature's wrath, so tragically amplified by man's mismanagement. Since 1991, 4 deadly landslides and floods have struck southern Leyte and claimed thousands of lives. In Punta, 1/5 of the population was killed. Just 3 of the town's 90 houses were left standing after a landslide in 2003. Malangsa is a small fishing village not far from Punta. Here in 2006, a catastrophic mudslide ripped away the gardens and fields of the people who live there. 20 were suffocated by the mud.
It was raining so hard there were landslides. One child and a pregnant woman died in this disaster. I'm a good man, I work hard, I can't leave. The only way I can get income is from farming here. God will protect me.
Children were shocked and traumatized by what they saw and the sheer level of destruction they witnessed. We will die if we stay here.
The fishing village was moved to a safer place inland. Although the fishermen have to find alternative work, it's better for the children, who now go to a modern, well-resourced school. On the curriculum is training in early warning systems. The rain gauge records rainfall levels. If it goes over the 650 millilitre mark, then flooding and landslides could occur.
The time of the measuring of this rain gauge is 8 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So when there is a very, very heavy rain, you will just measure it hourly. An hour you will just point this. So you have a rain gauge in your own home, then your mother, your father did not know how to use it, then you are knowledgeable about how to measure this rain gauge. You will hold it. We have to know what to do in preparing and alertness during, after, before the disaster comes.
Alvin and Honey have both learned to read the environmental warning signs, which they track at the office of the Mines and Geosciences Bureau.
The red ones are identified as the ones with the high susceptibility to landslides. The green ones are moderately susceptible to landslides, and the yellow ones are low. The entire island is susceptible to landslides, except those flat areas.
In Part 2, we see how by taking responsibility for community safety, young people are battling fatalistic attitudes of the older generation. Santa Paz in the Philippines is a deeply religious community. There are some who think preventative measures are pointless because God decides everything.
We are not afraid of that landslide-prone mountain because with God's mercy, nothing happens. Nobody died, and we believe strongly in prayers. We believe strongly in prayers, and I know God will help us. I know God will protect us.
It is not God's will, because He cannot make people dying because of His will. But I think it is man-made because I think some of the villagers in that barangay cutting trees, have a kaingin. So I think it is a bad contribute in the hazard of their area.
A local priest agrees. Honey's father, Father Reed Tellen. He supports his daughter's efforts to make the school safer.
I could imagine children buried alive in the raging mud just because we didn't do anything to reduce the tragedy or whatever.
You really think it's significant to have this campaign and tell to my peers to relocate to such a place?
Yeah, as a president, you are the president of the student government, so you should have to act on that. Explain to them. We will not allow our children to be buried alive.
So what do the pupils think? They seem to be very clear about the options.
If you want to stay here, that's okay, but I really want to move to Pasanon. I want to be there because we don't really know when a landslide is going to happen here.
Santa Paz National High School.
Incredibly, despite the lobbying by the children in this very conservative part of the country, some adults are resistant to changes that will make their lives safer. Fortunately, the kids have a powerful ally. Former governor of Southern Leyte, Rosette Larius. She heads the provincial disaster team, which for months has been consulting people on disaster countermeasures that they would find acceptable. The authorities finally decided that the new school building should be built, that it was decided to locate the school at nearby Pasanon, considered to be a far less hazardous position.
This was a very controversial area. Many of the parents didn't want to move them into this area because they really wanted, the Filipino, it's the nature of the Filipino that we want to stay where we are. We're not want to move out to another area. So they felt that the personality of Santa Paz would be totally eradicated if they moved to Pasanon.
On the day of the school opening, those who are unwilling to send their children to Pasanon protest as regional officials arrive.
Nacional Barangay High School to be back in Santa Paz. No transfer shall be made outside the territorial boundaries of the LGU concerned.
Despite the protests, the project is completed and the day arrives for the grand opening.
For the parents, I know you will be at peace when your children come to school here in Pasanon. Because I know what happens to Santa Paz when it rains. I was there in 2003 when I saw the ground breaking up. Because that area in Santa Paz where the school is located is in a very dangerous area.
An activity like this, like moving things out into transferring, involved a lot of emotional displacement also. So when the children themselves were the ones who helped out in the initial relocation of the temporary site, and the parents were actually just followed suit. No? It happens that the children became the leaders in this instance.
With a rapidly growing population, the Philippines is becoming a densely populated country. Inevitably, this forces people to live close to the hazardous mountainsides and sometimes on them. Resourceful community leaders are needed to cope with the dangers that lurk in this landscape. Maria Pereza Soledad from Nahulidad Barangay is one of them.
We established our tree park way back in 1994, and during that time we let the children participate. We told them that we do this because we wanted to recover the trees that we have lost. They are aware that when they plant trees along the riverbanks, they are helping protect our barangay from flash flooding later on. We are protecting our community from storm surges, they know that, from the waves, the big waves which comes especially during typhoons.
This community has set up a project to try and ensure a steady supply of fish, as well as jobs for young people.
The fish cage is owned by our youth organization. They call themselves Anak Nahulin. Anak is actually in the dialect for child. They take care of everything, constructing the fish cage, taking care of the fish, and even harvesting and selling them, everything. Here in Nahulid, the child's participation in every activity that we have is really given so much importance, because we did not inherit this world from our ancestors. We borrowed it from our children.
Go! 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
In St Bernard, near Gwynsagon, site of the worst landslide, the Sunrise Theatre Group regularly reenacts the tragedy. Some of those acting are survivors, and Rowan is one.
Being a student survivor, I have my responsibility to get involved to this, since I have my experience, and though we lost our loved ones, the memories, we will have only to treasure that. I have that responsibility myself to be a voice to all of us people, especially for the rights and responsibilities of the children, for our protection. This is a combination of education and entertainment at the same time. Education in the sense that they may be able to pick lessons from it. Emotionally, most especially the adults, the parents, the teenagers here, all of us people who are living in St. Bernard will become learned, and what we are hoping for.
They can express, oh, we have experienced that one, it's true. So there is a sort of affirmation. This is also an opportunity for the children to be listened, and then of course to be involved.
In the evening, over 2,000 people come to watch. Honey greets the audience and encourages them to learn from the production.
We, the children, have this right to participate and get involved. And that's why I want that we, the children, the voice of the children will be heard. Through that, we can say that we have this power to create something and help, like saving lives of people.
Alvin and his friends, many survivors of this tragedy, start by acting out their life before the disaster struck. He believes they can stop future tragedies.
We have a big voice in our community, being a children. So me, being a student and a child, I will play a big role in preventing the disaster.
I hope that all the people there in our village will learn that it is really important to think first of our safety, so that the children and all other people will be safe and their lives will not be lost if there could be a disaster.